Hey, it's your girl Carla Renata. We are back for episode 40 of Black Tomatoes here at Black Hollywood Live with our special guest, Phillip Boutte Jr. and Marvel Mania. Stay tuned. What's up?
I was not awake, I'm awake now.
I was so distracted by Scott going, whoa, that is loud. I was like, what is happening right now? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 40 of Black Tomatoes here at Hollywood. Black Hollywood Live. See, he got me off a clip. I can't even remember the name of the daggum network. I am your host, Carla Renata, and joining me today are...
Scott Menzel, lovely to be here as always.
Cool. And we have a very special guest in the house, Mr. Phillip Boutte Jr.
Hello, thank you guys for having me.
And we will get to him in a second. But right now, what you're hearing in the background is Out of Sight by The Boogie. It is the theme song, or one of many songs that are played in Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, baby. And we are about to talk about that. But before we do, how was your week, my brother?
Pretty good. Very busy, just like yours, and lots of interviews. But it was a fun week.
Yeah,
it was a fun week for
How
sure.
How about you, Phillip?
Wonderful.
That's all you got to say to me. Wonderful.
Lots of Christmas stuff. So I took my daughter. We went and we got our Christmas tree, and we kind of did Christmassy things.
Very nice.
All right, but before we get into the interview, I want you to explain to people very quickly before we get to you what exactly a costume concept designer is. Because when I first met you, I didn't know what that was either.
Okay. So my job is I work directly with costume designers for film, motion picture, television, etc. And I am the one that visually shows what it is that their ideas are to come across the screen before the costumes get approved. So if you're doing a superhero, I work with the costume designer. We design different things visually. I put them down, on the computer, figure out what that's going to look like. That goes to producer, director, studio. They approve it, and then we start to go in and then make the costume.
Ooh. Sounds lovely.
Yeah.
So, for those of you that are joining us, I met Phillip through a sister named Monique, a publicist named Monique, and she was doing something special for a specialized project they were doing in conjunction with Black Panther, and that is how I met Phillip, and we have been ace boon coons ever since.
Yes, we have.
We really kind of have. We holler at each other on social media all the time. It's really kind of lovely. So, but we'll get back to Phillip in a minute. So you just sit and lay in the cut while we talk about Spider-Man into the Spiderverse. First of all, I'm like superhero girl. I love superhero movies.
Yes,
I really do.
Yes, you
and
do.
I kind of love the the Spider-Man franchise, but I particularly love Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse franchise because they are introducing a new character that has been in the comic books for years, but they never brought this one to the big screen, and they did it in an animated version and not like with, people running around, real live people, but they did it in the animated form, which I kind of was living for. And they're doing it in the form of Miles Morales. I love this so much. It was so much fun. It was emotional. It was action packed. I think it was probably other than Black Panther, it was probably one of the best superhero movies I've seen in a while. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I was sitting next to a member of our organization whose name shall remain nameless because I don't want to put him on blast, but he was boo-hooing.
Oh, yeah?
And I was like, oh no, it's making people verklempt. I was like, oh my God. And then another film critic that we know, who shall remain nameless, this critic said that they cried 3 times. I'm like, oh, it's invoking emotion out of people.
Wow.
I was not moved to tears.
No, I was not either.
I was not moved to tears, but I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. How about you?
The more I think about this movie, the more I like it. The animation style is just phenomenal. This is something that you have not seen done before.
No.
And it's pretty spectacular. Some of the movie looks like it's 3D, even though the movie is not in 3D. And I thought that was pretty remarkable. What I love about this movie is that it's very much a fanboy movie for part of it, but then just a celebration of all things Marvel for the other half of it.
That's why we doing Marvel Mania. Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that aspect of this film, and especially that scene that what this movie's all about, where all the different Spider-Man characters come together. that was when the movie like took it to the next level for me, and I really loved that.
I loved that. It was bittersweet, but kind of endearing all at the same time to see Stan Lee make another cameo.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh, there's Stan Lee, but oh, there's Stan Lee. You know what I mean? It was very exciting. They They introduced they introduced Gwen Stacy, and they introduced. I love that all the people that were doing all the voices were these people that don't normally do voiceovers.
Yes.
Like Peter Parker was done by Jake Johnson from New Girl.
Yep.
Okay, so
John Mulaney as the pig. You know, like,
Mahershala Ali is Uncle Aaron.
Right.
Like, it was just really interesting. But full disclosure about Jake Johnson, so and you will see this in my review on my site. But oh my goodness, so I've said many times that I act sometimes, and one day I was on the set of New Girl, guest starring there, and I was in a scene with Jake Johnson where I had to kiss him, and it was my first on-screen kiss. So I was like, what's going to happen when he walks in this room? Because it's been a minute since I've seen him, and I know he's not going to remember, because, you know, when you have guest stars coming on your show, people come and go every week for years. There's no way you're going to remember all these people. But I'm like, but I have that kind of face that I knew, like, how many black people over the course of the time that show was on the air were on that show guest starring. I'm just saying. So I was like, okay. So we're sitting there, and we're asking these questions, and I can tell on the look on his face, he's got that look like, why do I know her?
Yeah.
Why do I know her? And I really didn't want to go there, but I could see every time I open my mouth, he'd just be like, he'd be looking at me like, So finally I was like, okay, so full disclosure, this is how you know me, because you looking at me like you think you know me. He was like, did we work together or so? He said, because I really do. I know your face. And then when I told him where I knew him from, he's like, oh, thank goodness, because he said he thought he was crazy. He said he thought he was going crazy. He said, I thought I was, you know, like, did we have a really bad night together? Was it a one-night stand? Like, what happened? It was like this whole thing. It was hilarious. But I love that they used him. I love that Brian Tyree Henry is one of the voices. Lily Tomlin, Luna Lauren Velez, who full disclosure, was one of the chorus members in the first international tour of Dreamgirls. And I met her and her sister. She has a twin sister. Her twin sister was on New York Undercover.
Wow.
And on Dexter. Her twin sister was on those two shows.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, okay. This is really interesting, because they're identical. They look exactly alike. But Luna is a little more fluffy and a little more like this. And Lauren is a little more, what's the adjective? She's a little more she's a grittier version of the two of them. Is the best way to say that. She's just grittier. You know, she got her mouth like a truck driver. Like, she's that chick, and Luna's kind of like, hi, how are you? It's a very different thing happening. But Zoe Kravitz is doing Mary Jane's voice. You mentioned John Mulaney.
Haley Steinfeld.
Nicolas Cage is the Spider-Man noir.
Well, this is the weird thing right now. Like,
which was hilarious.
Like, we saw the other movie earlier this year, Teen Titans Go to the Movies, and he was Superman in that movie. It's like, has Nicolas Cage found his new acting gig? He's like, he has to do voiceover work now.
I'm just
saying,
that's it.
He's
He's getting it on.
Yeah.
He is getting his thing on. But I really thoroughly enjoyed this movie. They kept messing around with the release dates for this a little bit, but I think they finally settled on a release date of December 14th.
Yeah.
So that's next weekend, I believe, next Saturday.
Which is very smart on their behalf.
No, next Friday, yeah.
Because, I mean, it's going up against Mortal Engines, which this movie is going to slaughter that movie at the box office. I'm telling you that right now.
Yep. No, don't say that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Spidey's got to prevail.
No, Spidey's going to prevail. No. Spidey is gonna like knock that right out of the park.
I thought you were saying Spidey was going to get crushed. I was like, oh, no.
No, Mortal Engines is going to get crushed very badly by Spider-Man.
I thought, why are we clowning Spidey?
No.
Okay.
Come on, you got to know about Venom, which wasn't even good. killed everything at the box office. So, you know.
And leave it to Scott to bring it back around.
Yeah.
You are hilarious.
You're welcome.
Oh my God, you got jokes.
Hold on. We got to give a shout out to director Peter Ramsey.
Yes, Peter Ramsey, the director of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Because also, not only did he come and do this one, but he also, I believe, don't quote me, but I believe he's the first black director to do a feature over $100 million for DreamWorks with Guardians.
That is correct.
Wow.
Okay.
That is correct. You are. And I interviewed him too.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
I interviewed him too.
The holiday one?
Yes.
Oh, I love that movie. I
was
feel
amazing.
like no one really talked about that movie, but I really loved it. The Jack Frost character and everything. I loved that
Peter
one.
kind of flies
Yeah.
under the radar,
He-
though. He's
oh,
hilarious.
no, he's super under the radar.
He's so
the
under
greatest
the radar.
guy.
He walks in the room. He's like, "Yo, what's up?"
Yeah.
he just kind of flies under the radar. I'm like, y'all got jokes. Let me give a shout out to some people that we got in the chat room. We got my boy Michael B, who is a constant, and we got Cup of Soul Show. What's up, y'all? Thank you for joining us for Black Tomatoes here at Black Hollywood Live. And now we are gonna go back to our guest, Mr. Phillip Boutte Jr. in the house. So, Phillip, I know I asked you this before, but there are people that weren't privy to that conversation.
Okay.
How did you get involved in being a costume concept designer?
I went to Comic-Con right out of school, so I was studying illustration at Cal State Long Beach in the illustration program, and I wanted to use my illustration talents in film, and I knew I wanted to do that in some way. So when I graduated, I went to Comic-Con in San Diego, and they had a panel of costume designers from local 892, the Costume Designers Guild, all big designers from different films, so Harry Potter, Narnia, just different ones, right?
Wow.
And so me and my friends were there, and we said, you know what, let's show our portfolio. So we went and we showed our portfolios. After the panel, they had like a little autograph section, and we went down the line and just showed our portfolios from our college, our college books. And one of my friends, Oksana, she's a really great watercolor painter. So the designer from Narnia took her card, and we didn't think anything of it. So we leave, and the next week, we're just doing our thing. We're out of school trying to do the college, like, what am I going to do with my life thing,
Right?
And
As we all do.
Oksana gets the call that says, it was Isis Musenden who did Narnia, and she said, hey, how would you like to come to Prague with me for 8 months to do Narnia 2? Wow. So Oksana calls me, and she says, I got a job. And I was like, what happened? She tells me. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to join the guild too. So I joined the guild.
Oh, no.
And I got a call the next month by Sonia Hayes to do The Mummy 3 with Jet Li. So then that was my first job, and I did that for like 6 months. Got to go to Montreal, see the set, do everything. So it was like a big, for me, it was a big deal. And then from that point on, my friend Brian, the other guy that was with us, he joined the guild seeing that we had jobs, and he got Star Trek, the reboot of Star Trek. So then they needed another illustrator, and he brought me onto that. So from straight out of school, going to Comic-Con, and then getting into the guild, I've been working ever since.
That's incredible. You never hear that.
Isn't that bananas?
Never hear that.
That's bananas.
That is bananas. My first question to you is, you've worked on, what is it, like over 70 projects at this point now. Which one was the most difficult for you to work on? Which one required the most skills and like revisions and things of that nature?
I think most difficult in terms of job that I can remember was Man of Steel.
Okay.
Because Man of Steel for me was a transitional, and like every artist has transitional periods, right, where you're learning, and Man of Steel was a big push for me. Not only it was professionally challenging, but also artistically challenging to try and figure out a style and how to do a lot of the stuff. So before that point, I had more like a kind of like a fashion illustration or traditional style or to my work, where I was still kind of drawing with pencil, doing watercolor scanning into the computer, and then I was drawing and putting fabrics into the computer. That was kind of my experience up until Man of Steel. Then I started working with some really great concept artists. I was working with Konstantin Sakaris and Ed Natividad, Warren Manser, Keith Christensen. All of those guys, they're really talented, but they all had like a leap up in terms of like they had been working in the computer. So then I started using photographs and painting, and it was a big challenge for me. But I think I was on that project for like 4 months possibly, and that was the first time my work shifted into feeling more realistic.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
So I happen to know that. So when we first met, there's this actress named Denise Boutte. So the first thing I said was, "Are you related to Denise Boutte? Because that's my girl." He's like, "No relation, no relation."
We have met her. She's very sweet.
But I also happen to know that you were an actor
Yes.
previously. So what made you? Because I know for actors, for us, it can be a little, especially as a person of color, it can be a little tricky because you get relegated to certain roles. So when you decided to leave acting, was that part of your decision to transition out of it? Was that
Yes.
you were being relegated to certain roles as opposed to what you wanted to play?
Definitively. So that's a good question. Definitively. I was an actor from like 3 until around 16 or 17. So I pretty much stayed in. I was doing commercials and I did some television spots and all that. And I was kind of working, and that's what I wanted to be. It was an actor. I said, I'm going to, that's what I'm going to dedicate myself to. But that transition from, like, when you're being a young, like a young actor to a teen, it's difficult in itself. But then it also comes with excitement, right? So it's like now I'm driving, so I'm driving to my auditions, and I'm getting auditions for stuff that I recognize. So it's like, oh, come to do New York Undercover, and I'm like, great. So I go to New York Undercover, and I get my sides, and I start reading them, and I'm like, they're like, okay, you're a gang member, and you get shot, and then everybody helps turn your life around, and I'm like, all right. All right. And then they say, okay, well, now let's do ER. And I'm like, oh, ER. You're going to be on ER. Go get my sides. It's like, so you're a gang member and you get hit by a car and then everybody helps turn your life around. I'm like, this is the same person over and over and over again. And I think that experience-wise, it's a challenge to play roles that you're not familiar with. But at the same time, I always looked for that like kind of gold line where I was like, where are the people that are like me, like have both parents, going to school, getting good grades? Like, where's that guy? Or can I play someone similar to that guy? And the roles kept kind of coming in to where it wasn't that guy. It was a very stereotypical guy, and I got really frustrated. I remember being young and really frustrated about it. And I decided, I was like, you know what, I don't want to do that now. I think what I'll do is I'll drop back and maybe I can find something that I like to do that helps me storytell, or I can be a change in this. I can go and find a way to go back under and say, I'm going to tell that story as opposed to complaining about it. Let me see if I can find it. And one thing that I knew that I always had done in my trailer, because my parents were very protective because they didn't want me to get into like, hanging out with adults when I was younger and stuff. So I would sit in my trailer and do my homework and draw. So that's kind of where I said, I'm going to go to college and I'm actually going to use my illustration talents to see if I can kind of storytell and kind of come back full circle. So cut to Black Panther, and
you better use my terminology. Cut
to Black Panther and A Wrinkle in Time with Ava DuVernay. That was a big turning point for me because I could see the change. I could see those roles starting to come full circle. So there was a very that in that year I did both those projects at the same time, going back and forth between the two, with costume designer Paco Delgado and Ruth Carter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your nickname for Ruth?
Truth.
And why you call her that?
Because she is the absolute truth. That's my girl. I love her to death. She's the sweetest person. Very genuine, but also she has a big heart, and she tries to share as much as possible. So with this project in particular, it was good to kind of work with her and see her kind of balance things, and then also bring her knowledge, because she has a wealth of knowledge, especially about Black culture and just like African culture, to kind of funnel that into what this could be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of these designs. I want to talk about the Motherland Queen Mother design first, and talk about how you and Ruth collaborated on that look for Angela Bassett.
Okay, so the first thing we did was she said she wanted her to look stately, elegant, all of those things. And at the time, Angela wasn't cast yet, so we just knew she needed to be an eloquent woman. Mm-hmm. So we looked at different shapes. Like the hat shape was one of the first things that we found, and it was supposed to be like kind of a stately, motherly but very like queen shape, right? Mm-hmm. And then the shape of the shoulder fan was another one that we found. So I think we had referenced like a Gareth Pugh, who's a fashion designer, kind of shape. So we went with those two elements first, and then Ruth started to infuse the history into what those were. So like, what does this hat shape mean? What textures can I play on it? What symbols can I put on it that represent, power, womanhood, motherhood, those types of things. And so we kind of started from there. And then once Angela was cast, we're just like, well, you can't get a better gift.
Can't get a better queen mother than Angela Bassett.
So we just knew that when you put her in that, she's going to own it. And then from there, we contacted designer. I call her like a digital cutter fitter, but she's more than that. She's like a digital 3D artist, Julia Corner, who has done work with Iris Van Herpen, another famous fashion designer, right? And does her own collections of 3D printed stuff. So when we gave her the general silhouette and the drawings that I had done, then she went and she created algorithms for within the shapes to 3D print and print out these garments. That
Oh my goodness! All of this goes into these designs.
All of that goes into
Wow, that's a lot.
it. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the look for. Is it Dora Milaje?
Dora Milaje.
Dora Milaje.
Yeah.
See, I just butchered that all the way down. So let's talk about that look for a second. I love that look.
So that look, that I would be remiss to not call out my good buddy at Marvel's visual development department, Anthony Francisco. Anthony started the pipeline. They have a visual development team. I think for this one it was run by Ryan Meinerding, head of visual development, and they have a team of artists that sit at Marvel, and everyone, they start with the comic book, right, which is why you end up getting characters that really feel like, you know, the source material.
Push your microphone up a little bit. There you go.
That feel like the source material. So once they started to go, Anthony started to do different passes at the Dora Milaje themselves, different ones, and then we in the costume department were also doing our own. Me and Keith Christensen with Ruth, just kind of funneling and trying to find this balance. But Anthony's design was the one that ended up getting approved and done. And then once we got that initial feeling of it, and that was approved, and he had put a lot of his personal influences into it, it gets passed to us. Then what Ruth did is she takes it from there and starts to develop what those things mean. So she's looking at beads from different tribes and saying these beads mean power, these beads mean beauty, adornment, that type of deal. She tried to influence what those things were, what those patterns are, and then got the costumes kind of made and then kind of funneled into this very powerful, you know, costume that you see, along with, you know, making the choices to use the different color palettes of the reds and the browns and the oranges and that type of deal. So it was a full process where it started with Marvel, comes to us, goes down the line, and then we have all these beautiful costume people like the costume makers at Bill Hargate Costumes, Mary Ellen, that kind of help fuse everything all together to get to the point where you see it on screen.
And let me thank you ahead of time for forwarding some of these illustrations. If you guys go to the YouTube channel, you will see those illustrations on the YouTube version of Black Tomatoes. But that is why I'm asking Philip to describe in greater detail verbally for those of you listening on iTunes and Spotify, so that you can visualize with your own two ears what those designs may have come to fruition in. Let's talk a little bit about Jabari Elder, the white one.
The Jabari Elder. Oh, the Jabari Elder. So in those are just general passes at trying to figure out. We knew that we were going to have the different, like the Jabari with the wood. So it's trying to figure out, like, if they have elders, because every tribe has one, what would that look like? So we were playing with different shapes that we had found and kind of trying to find stately ones. But then also some of the chest pieces that you end up seeing on the Jabari, they're kind of carved, made to look like wood. And that chest shape in the comic, they kind of worship like apes or gorillas, right? So it's like there's that play, very subtle, because we want to offend anybody, but it was basically in the comic that type of deal. So we took the chest shape of a gorilla and sculpted this kind of shelf, which when you look at the way that their chests look, it's that type of deal. Or the anatomy is slightly different than ours. It kind of creates this weird little, like, kind of plated shelf. So you can see that in the costume, along with the elders kind of mirrored that, or they had like wooden shapes around their necks to kind of give them a little bit of a longer neck. So
Philip, I am so impressed with you right now. I'm like, because honestly, and I don't know about you, Scott, but you innately know that there's a lot of thought and a lot of history and a lot of research that goes into developing these costumes. And when we watch it as a movie consumer, it's in the back of your mind, but you don't really think about it. So to have you here talking about it at length and really breaking it down, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it, and I will never look at a film the same way again, ever.
With that being said, I mean, this is the thing what makes Black Panther so remarkable, is the attention to detail in every single one of the costumes. I mean, that's something that when I went back to see it a second and third time that I really started focusing on, is the attention to detail that went into it. And, you know, thinking about, you know, I looked up some of the films that you were a part of, like just thinking of the costumes of like, oh, the buttons here, or like you were talking about the beads, like that's stuff that people like us, we start paying attention to when we visit. And I think more people need to appreciate that when they go to the movies and see how much hard work goes into this. You know, my question that I had for you is, you know, doing all this work for Black Panther, How many revisions did you have to go through?
Oh, there's revisions galore. Like for all the artists working involved, we go through. I mean, sometimes like you'll label it like you'll label your work like like Dora Milaje A and then B and then C and then you end up at like S and then it's like S1, S2 and then we always joke about it. It'll be like, okay, this one's approved, so it's like final, and they're like, wait, change this, and you're like final A, final. You know, it just keeps going. So there's tons of revisions for us. But ultimately at the end, once they approve and they settle on something, then it kind of moves down to all the craftspeople involved, and we have people that just take it to. So you've got like cutter fitters and tailors, and there's a lot of jobs that people don't know. There's ager dyers. They're the people that make clothes look like they're not new. So they're the ones that take them and age them down or put battle marks in them, or just something simple like they buy a new pair of shoes and knowing that the character's worn them, they take them and stretch them out and bend them. So I'll give a shout out to Jack Taggart, one of the better ones, but it's one of those things where there's jobs that you don't see that end up going to where the costumes finally come, and it's not just someone making it. It's a whole process, a full artistic process to get there, along with all the research. Like there's tons of research that we do for these costumes.
Absolutely. The chat room has some questions for you.
Yeah.
So they want to know, what is your dream project that you'd like to work on?
Ooh. Dream project, that's hard. I think anything that kind of pushes the narrative. I love Afrofuturism right now, so I think if anything like that, like I know there's I'm going to butcher this because I can't say it now because I'm on the spot. It's Children of Blood and Bone, I think, is a book, and I can't remember the author's name. I feel horrible about it, but I would love to work on something along the lines of that, where it kind of pushes these, because we have this untapped market of Afrofuturism, or even just taking like Black culture and elevating it to something we haven't seen before. Because one of the things I think that Black Panther broke that I was happy for was, I feel like a lot of the times, even with like Black sci-fi, we're not really in it that often, but when we do get it, they don't play like we're always grounded in some way to where we don't get the sky's the limit. So it's like, if the sky's the limit is like going to space, it's like we just protected our neighborhood or something. Like it's like I want to really push it up. It's always like, well, let's ground them first. So it's like, oh, it's like you go back. It's like, oh, there's slavery, and then there's or there's the struggle of like being poor and in the hood, and that seems to be where they start Black characters always. Like there's this grounding, and I'm just like, well, why can't, like, if I'm a superhero, why am I only saving a few blocks or saving my community? Why can't I save the world? Like that's what Black Panther really for me did, was like, it's like they had their own stuff, their own thing, and I think that that's something, if I can work on projects that kind of help elevate that, it really is untapped.
You are such an evolved brother. I love it. One other question came from Michael B. This one comes from Couple Soul Show. They want to know, what is your favorite costume that you have assisted in doing costume concept designs for?
I think the one that comes to mind right away with that one is actually from Hunger Games with that Trish Somerville, costume designer Trish Somerville, because it was one of the first times that I saw something that I had done printed out where I knew I had affected it in a really way. With the dress that she wears when she the Mockingjay dress, when she turns around and it's blue and then it turns into the wedding dress.
Oh yeah.
That one, Trish gave me, we were going, and she knew she wanted it to be blue and elegant, and she knew she wanted it to flow and catch the wind so that when she spun around it would move. But pattern wise, we were trying to figure out what would actually be on that dress. So I took, I think it's an Alawan peacock. It's like a specific type of peacock bird. And I took all these pictures from Google, and I was cutting out different patterns of feathers and all that. And I did this like real symmetrical kind of cool pattern. And then took some outlines of bird wings, because I knew that she'd have the bird wings, and I put those in a layer that kind of went around and wrapped around her from the back to the front, so it goes around the whole thing. And that was just something that me and Trish were going back and forth on, but it was an idea, it was an idea of just trying to get that general feeling. And then what I didn't recognize is, usually conceptual, it's like an idea, right? So you use that idea to sell, but that design, that thing ended up being printed on the dress. So that thing I did in my computer is what she actually wears. And when I saw it for the first time, that was one of the more powerful moments for me in costume design, where I said, that's that thing. And it was a really cool moment that I could share with Trish and just kind of say, like, I was really grateful for that, but also it allowed me to see kind of where I was going, that the things that I'm doing I actually do affect or show up on screen. So that was probably my favorite.
Do you get an opportunity to see, how soon in advance of a public screening do you get an opportunity to see your work in the final film?
Sometimes while we're going, and then sometimes like I'm just like everybody else. Like sometimes there's films where it's just like, because my job is so early. Like my job is usually pre-production or when it just starts. So I'll work on something for the first 3 or 4 months that they start, and then I move to something else, and then they go off and they start filming. So unless I'm working on something really long or they're manufacturing as I go, I don't really see stuff, or I'll see stuff in process. Like I'll see like the beginning of a hat shape or the cutter fitter's kind of like pattern, or like I'll see a garment not in the actual fabric but in something simple. But when I do get to see it, it's awesome.
When I was just thinking about this because you were talking about Hunger Games, and when you have source material where it's illustrated, something like Black Panther, where you can go back to the comics and you can look at the designs of the costumes and you have history, and then you have completely original concepts like something like Greatest Showman, where you don't really have as much source material to go off of. Which do you prefer? Do you like something where you actually have stuff that you can go and reference, or is it something where you can just develop off the cuff and kind of create something unique?
It's kind of a mix of both. I really love research because ultimately, as a concept, like when you're doing concept, right, even when you're working with your designer, right, because the costume designer has a lot of ideas, and they come and they've got full research boards and their complete thought process on what the character is going to be, right? And they're funneling that to you. So I kind of have to read their mind and also kind of figure out what they are trying to show. But I love research because it provides me the means to do my job. Like drawing to me is understanding. You can't draw what you don't understand. So you have to, if I'm not provided with those things, I still have to make up some story in my head in order to draw what it is. So it's like you have to kind of come up with something. So it's like when you are putting together, like for Black Panther, right? If you're putting together stuff, it's nice for me to know this tribe, the necklaces and the beads that they have around their neck, they're all given to them by male suitors, like throughout their life. And so the more you have, the more beautiful you're considered. And then if you see the black beads, that means you're either a widow or you're in mourning. So it's like learning that then makes me realize like, okay, well that inspires me to then do something to the costume. So it's like I have to at least know where this character comes from or who they are, or if I don't, I have to make it up,
So for something like Bohemian Rhapsody, it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum, because those types of rock stars, their costume is very minimum. So what was the discussion about recreating some of the looks for, say, Rami Malek for Freddie Mercury, or the other band members of Queen like Roger and Brian May?
So this one's an interesting one. So for Bohemian Rhapsody, that's costume designer Julian Day, and we actually have never met. So what ended up happening here is that because they were moving so quickly, I know historically they wanted to try and get all the costumes exactly right, or as close to possible, while also adding little flourishes to make the film more interesting, right? But they were really true to the source material. I was brought on because they didn't have a specific time where the drawings that they did were very loose to just bring the drawings to life to promote them, to promote the film. So it's kind of like it's an after effect. But I know that the research that went involved in the costumes, all the research, I got a lot of the source material that they had, and they pulled it directly from, the real stuff. So they tried to recreate those costumes as much as possible.
Okay, we got another question. They want to know, how soon are you called to do the concepts for the costume designs during production, when the script is finished or before?
Now more often than not, it's like we're usually, the script is being written while we're working.
Oh.
So that's a little bit difficult. Sometimes the script is done before, but I'm at the very beginning of the process. So when the costume designer comes on and they're thinking about their initial things, it's like that's my job. So it's like most of the time we're doing it. And I wish we had scripts more often than not, but sometimes we might just have an outline. And then the script is being rewritten, and then it's like we're just like, okay, so we're just kind of trying to figure stuff out. And then other times we'll have a very detailed outline. I think for Black Panther, the script was pretty much done, I think, but we were working maybe 2 months without it being kind of completely done. But for the most part, Ryan and all the team, they knew what they wanted, to the point where in our office we had a full map of Wakanda. We knew where all the tribes lived and all of the different stuff and what the outlines were, and then our whole office was just covered in research from different tribes of Africa. So it just depends on what you're working on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for breaking all of that down, because I'm telling you, I had no clue.
I had no idea.
None. And so it's wonderful to have you here to discuss that. So let's talk about these Golden Globe nominations for a minute.
Okay.
We know that the best picture, best motion picture drama nominees are Stars Born, Black Panther, woo,
Yes.
Black Klansman, woo, Bohemian Rhapsody, woo, If Beale Street Could Talk, woo.
Yes.
All my favorites. Now, I think I kind of said that these would be
Yes,
coming down the pipe,
Yes,
so
you
I
did.
just need to get a little props for that
yeah.
because I know I said that. I know I did.
You did.
Okay. Best motion picture, musical or comedy, Crazy Rich Asians, which I kind of didn't see coming. The Favorite, Green Book, Mary Poppins Returns, and Vice. Let me just say something about Vice. Did you see Vice?
I love Vice.
Oh my God. Okay.
You didn't like it? Okay. It's very diverse. I understand that it's polarizing. Not everyone's gonna like it. I get it.
So Philip, Vice is this film about Dick Cheney. You know, Vice meaning the vice president, right? So it's not okay. Let me be clear. It's not that I didn't like it. I just was like, it felt very similar to The Big Short to me. It felt like maybe it was the filming style was very similar to The Big Short to me. But I just
same editors and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Casting was pretty much the same.
Maybe I should watch it again.
It's makeup's on point.
Yo, my
I
the
did
God.
see
makeup
that.
is on
I was
point.
gonna say.
It is.
I mean,
I did see the trailer.
In all fairness, Carla, I mean, it's a very polarizing film. I mean, it's hard to watch. It's very jarring the way that it's edited together. Like
I didn't have a problem with any of that.
You didn't have any?
I didn't have a problem with any of that. I didn't. I feel so bad for saying this because I usually don't say that I don't like something. I'm usually trying to be sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops. But I am. But I don't know. I don't know. And then Amy Adams, there's that scene that she has with Dick Cheney in the beginning of the film where she's saying, "Do I need to make another choice because you are not seeming like the person that I needed to be." You're making me question my choice, is what she says. And I'm just that whole monologue that she gives is just like, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I like Amy Adams and I like Christian Bale. I actually adore both of them. I adore their performances always. But in this film, for some reason, I don't even know what it. I just need to go back and watch it.
Words.
I just need to go back and watch it. I need to watch it again because I usually watch films 2 or 3 times, and this one I just watched once, and this is why I watched them 3 times because the first time I watched them, if I'm feeling some kind of way like I am right now, if I go watch it a second or a third time with other people, then my.
Did you see it in the theater or did you watch your screener?
I watched the screener.
Probably the reason.
See, that's why I said I need to see what. Okay.
Probably the reason.
So let me stop talking about Vice and finish going through this. So best directors: Adam McKay for Vice, Alfonso Cuarón for Roma, Bradley Cooper for Stars Born, Peter Farrelly for Green Book, Spike Lee for Black Klansman. Like I said, I didn't see Vice in that mix because I hadn't seen it, and it was like the mystery film of the year. But the other ones, I don't have a problem with. How about you?
No.
Okay.
None.
Best performance by an actress in a motion picture drama, Glenn Close. Again, this, and I said this before. Why do y'all put stuff in the categories saying this is a nominee and the public ain't seen the damn movie?
Yeah.
Half the critics ain't seen the damn movie.
Yeah.
Like, can we see the movie?
Yeah,
and make
I know. I haven't seen it. You didn't see it. I'm guessing.
Oh, I'm so annoyed.
Yeah,
okay, so there's that. Lady Gaga for A Star Is Born, Melissa
Everyone's seen
McCarthy,
that.
Can You Ever Forgive Me, Nicole Kidman for Destroyer, and Rosamund Pike for A Private War. So that's that. Best performance by an actress in a motion picture, musical, or comedy, Constance Wu, Crazy Rich Asians. Again,
I
didn't see
predicted.
that coming.
I predicted
Really?
this. I was.
Okay.
If you go back to my tweet right after I saw this movie, I said that she was going to get some love.
Okay. I love her. I ain't saying
Yeah.
Charlize Theron for Tully.
Which I'm happy.
I
am
that.
so happy. I know you and I both did when we talked about that. I know.
Because I was like, I tweeted, I'm like, how is Tully not a part of the conversation? I was so annoyed. Okay. Elsie Fisher for 8th Grade, Emily Blunt for Mary Poppins Returns, and Olivia Colman for The Favorite. I ain't got no problem with any of that.
I got a problem with
which one?
Mary Poppins, but I have a problem with that movie in general.
Oh,
so.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that next week.
You did?
Oh, I did.
You had problems with it too?
No, I loved it.
No.
Oh, I was like, wait. Not both of my brothers. Oh, no. Okay. Best performance by an actress in a supporting role. Amy Adams for Vice. Claire Foy for First Man. Okay.
Nah.
Emma Stone, the favorite. Yes. Rachel Weisz, the favorite. Yes. Regina King and Beale Street. That's a very I'm not surprised by any of that. But I ain't surprised by any of that.
Claire Foy, really?
Claire Foy was the Foy. I said this here. Claire Foy was the best thing about the First Man to me, because I was like,
that
really,
movie.
First Man? Okay. Best performance by an actor. Bradley Cooper, Stars Born. John David Washington, Black Klansman. Lucas Hedges for Boy Erased. Rami Malek, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Willem Dafoe for At Eternity's Gate. Willem Dafoe I didn't see coming, but I'm excited to see that movie to see what's happening with him.
It's good.
Best performance by an actor, musical or comedy. Christian Bale, Vice. John C. Reilly, Stan and Ollie. Lin-Manuel Miranda, Mary Poppins Returns. Robert Redford, The Old Man and the Gun. Viggo Mortensen, Green Book. I don't have a problem with that, but I think that John C. Reilly and Christian Bale's slots could have been swapped for somebody else, like Michael B. Jordan.
I'm always gonna vote for
Chadwick Boseman. Just saying. Best.
Did you see Stan and Ollie?
I did see Stan and
I
Ollie.
really loved it.
I loved it too, but okay. Best performance. We'll talk about that next week too. Best performance by an actor in a supporting role is Adam Driver for Black Klansman. Finally, they put him in the.
I know.
Oh, you should have heard me. I went off. I was like, what the hell? Okay. Mahershala Ali for Green Book. Richard E. Grant, Can You Ever Forgive Me? Sam Rockwell, Vice. Timothy Chalamet for Beautiful Boy.
For Vice in this category, I am very upset that Steve Carell didn't get put into that category, because I thought he was much better.
Above the two of them, he was better. Best screenplay is Vice, Roma, If Beale Street Could Talk, The Favorite, and Green Book. I don't have no problem with any of that. No, Vice. Best original score, Isle of Dogs, Black Panther, Quiet Place, First Man, Mary Poppins Returns.
No Beale Street for that one.
No Beale Street, which is kind of a travesty.
Because that was like the best score of the year, in my opinion.
That's just like a travesty. Best original song, All the Stars from Black Panther, Girl in the Movies, Dumpling, Requiem for a Private War, Revelation, Boy Erased, Shallow, A Star Is Born. Not surprised by that.
Nope.
Motion picture animated, Incredibles 2, Isle of Dogs, Mirai, Ralph Breaks the Internet, Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse. Not surprised by that.
Nope.
Foreign language, Capernaum Girl, Never Look Away, Roma, Shoplifters. Not surprised by any of those. Best television series, The Americans, on FX, Bodyguard on Netflix, Homecoming on Amazon. I told you Homecoming was going to get some love.
I know.
Killing Eve on BBC America, Pose on FX. Television series, Barry, The Good Place, Kidding, The Kaminsky Method, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I don't know why The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel gets love all the time.
You don't like it? No? I like it.
But I am the Scott for this episode.
It's okay.
Oh my God.
Okay.
I am the Scott for this episode. Okay.
It's all right. I love when she's like this. It makes me so happy.
Whatever, Scott.
Whenever I hear her say, like, I don't like something on air, I'm like, yes,
I don't
Carla.
say it that
yes,
often. Okay.
I know.
Best television limited series, A Very English Scandal, The Alienist, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story, Escape at Dannemora, and Sharp Objects. Okay. All right. Actress in a television series. I'm going to butcher her name, girl. I'm so sorry. I apologize. Catriona Balfe. I just
Better
butchered
than
it.
if I said it, though.
Elizabeth Moss, Julia Roberts, Kerry Russell, Sandra Oh. Sandra Oh or Julia Roberts going to win that category. I'm telling you
Julia
that right
Roberts,
now.
yeah.
Best performance by an actress in a TV series, Alison Brie, Candice Bergen, Deborah Messing, Kristen Bell, Rachel Brosnahan. Actress in a limited series or made-for-TV motion picture, Amy Adams, Connie Britton, Laura Dern, Patricia Arquette, Regina King. Regina King nominated twice, y'all.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. And you know what? It's a lot more categories, and we're running out of time, so y'all can check them out at...
You know what I was surprised about? Like, people were all saying, like, they were so shocked that Pose got not...
I'm not shocked by that.
I'm not shocked at all. It's Ryan Murphy. Ryan Murphy is like the man when it comes to these things. All the time. All the time.
I'm not shocked
Everything
by that
he does,
Yep.
except for Scream Queen. But we don't talk about that.
I'm not shocked by that at all. But what I do want to throw this out before we close out. Sleepless in Seattle is celebrating an anniversary this year. It's one of my favorite movies ever because of Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. They had a screening this past week from the 2nd, I think, through the 5th in movie theaters. If you haven't seen it, if it's been a while since you've seen it, please check it out. It's really worth taking another gander at. And my streaming pick of the week is Dumpling. Ooh, why somebody calling me? Is Dumpling. Like, it showed up on my iPad. I'm like, no, don't call me. It's Dumpling with Jennifer Aniston. I heard she's really good in this.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Danielle McDonald is also in it, who I love. She was in a movie last year called Patty Cakes, which no one saw.
Oh, yeah.
But
I was like,
loved
why
that
is this girl
movie, and I thought
familiar to
she
me?
was so great. And she's great in this movie, too.
Yeah. All
It's
right.
all based about the music of Dolly Parton.
Oh, right. Dumpling, right.
Yeah.
And Dolly Parton is nominated, I think, for a Golden Globe as
For
well.
a song. For
Yeah,
the movie,
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, we flew through this show.
Yes,
that
we
was
did.
fast.
Yeah, it
oh, my
was fast.
goodness. Phillip Boutte Jr., thank you so much for coming on, my brother, and talking to us and breaking down what costume concept design is in your work and how you feel about it and all of that. I
Thank
really
you guys for
appreciate you
having
for
me.
that.
And breaking stereotypes, okay? How
Yes.
about that?
Let's continue to
Yes.
do so. Thank you very much.
Yes. To not say like, hey, yes, I'll play gang member number 5 7 more times.
They wanted to know my thoughts on Kevin Hart.
What's your
Let me
thoughts
just
on Kevin Hart?
address that real quick. So I feel like Kevin Hart should not have apologized. I feel like, let me take that back. I feel like Kevin Hart should have apologized because that's what he ended up doing anyway. And his whole thing was, I'm not going to apologize. And then in the end, he ended up doing it. I feel like he shouldn't have stepped down. I feel like if he had just taken the job, he could have made it up to the LGBTQ community by doing something wonderful at the Oscars
Yes.
with that community. So that's how I feel about Kevin Hart. Somebody said Ethan Hawke is. I think Ethan Hawke Couple Show is in some other nominees that I didn't mention, but we're running short on time, and I really got to go because we're way over at this point. But thank you again, Phillip, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What was I gonna say? Oh, I was gonna say. I got off a clamp. So next week will be our last live taping of Black Tomatoes here on Black Hollywood Live. I'm not saying it's the last show ever. I'm just saying it's the last show for 2018. So the last live taping for Black Tomatoes is next Sunday at 5 o'clock. But there will be some things airing, and I'll go through that next week since we're running on time. But for right now, I'm your host, Carla Renata. You can find me across all social media platforms at the Curvy Critic. You can also find me right after this at the General Hospital After Show. And all of my reviews are always up at thecurvyfilmcritic.com. Where can we find you, Scott?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @theotherscottm. I'm also on WeLiveEntertainment. It's my site, and you should go there to read all my written reviews and interviews. And as always, just a pleasure to be here. Wonderful.
And Phillip Boutte, where can they find you on the social media web?
Twitter and Instagram at pboutte, Boutte.
That's P like in Paul, B like in boy, Outte. Don't be spelling it something different. At least look his name up and get it right. All right, well, bye, y'all. This is Carla Renata and Scott
Bye,
Menzel.
everybody.
Boutte. See
Thank
you
you
next
very
time.
much.
From executives Keven Undergaro, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us. info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I am the official voice of Black Hollywood Live, Scipio. Instagram me at KingXOBay. Thanks for tuning in.
Hollywood Redefined.
The views expressed here are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.